Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Actor Gregg Binkley is today's guest. Gregg will be speaking about his many years in entertainment, including the many parts he has played in a variety of movies and television shows.
Gregg Binkley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Of course. Gregg, back in the days when you were a young boy, I think in Topeka, Kansas, I'm sure you had some favorite shows and favorite actors, but when did you decide that you would want to be one of those actors?
Well, I was invited to be in a play called You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, to play Snoopy when I was in 8th grade. And I never really thought about acting before, but the teacher invited me to do it, and I was up there singing and dancing, and people's response was really good. So I thought, well, maybe this is something that I would want to do. And what ended up happening, I started doing more and more plays, but the teacher brought in some guy to teach us how not to be nervous. He told us to get very quiet and pay attention to something in our stomach that would excrete something that would cause us to be nervous. Well, anyway, long story short, he taught me how to be nervous. I had never been nervous before. Suddenly, I'm extremely nervous to where I'm throwing up before performances. So I continued to do plays until high school, but then I got away from it. I was getting too nervous. But then I went to the University of Kansas. Near the end, I was starting to think, what do I want to do with my life? And as I got quiet, be an actor kept coming up. So I moved out here and been very fortunate over 35 years now to make a living at it.
That's amazing. And it brings me back to my days. What was my first, almost only, I think, on stage? I was in The Wizard of Oz. I played a munchkin.
Nice.
I was nervous during this song. We represent the Lollipop Guild. But it's amazing when this person kind of superimposes that it kind of backfired. Don't be nervous. Then he said, well, now I got to be nervous. So,
right, exactly.
It's great that you went back into it. And I love the fact that the voice came to you, be an actor. You know, if you build it, they will come.
That's right.
So that's great. So now, you've done so much work, but I'm really interested in your involvement with America's favorite deputy, Barney Fife. So why don't you tell us about that? There's a lot of intricate stories that I'm not sure everybody's aware of.
Well, so I used to kind of act like Barney Fife in Kansas. A friend of mine, Doug Thresher, used to impersonate him. And so I kind of realized I could do it too. And so I started doing it. And then I worked at a restaurant called Ed DeBevick's in Beverly Hills. It was a 50s diner. And when it opened, they said they were looking for character types. And so I went into the interview dressed like Barney Fife. I said, excuse me, I understand you're looking for people to work here. And they go, well, yeah, character types, not specific characters. So I started bringing tables as a nerd. And then after about a month, the manager said, hey, would you consider walking around the restaurant as if you were the security guard for the restaurant, Barney Fife? And I was like, yeah, sure, if it means I don't wait tables. So I would walk around table to table. And little by little, I started to develop Barney a little bit more. Prior to that, I would, kind of say, well, there's Andy and me and baby makes three. That's about all I can say. But over time, I started to develop it as it was a real character coming from me, not just an impersonation. And so Rick Dees, who was a very famous DJ at the time, came into the restaurant and saw me, and he was going to have a late night show on ABC. So he put me on there as the security guard for the TV show. And so I was on there for a year. And that's really kind of where it started to take off. And eventually, I got to meet Don Knotts. And one time, Vicki Lawrence had a talk show, and she invited me to surprise Don Knotts. And so, I'm giving you an extremely long story, very short, but eventually there I was on TV, sitting next to Don Knotts, me dressed like Barney, with a picture of him as Barney behind us. It was amazing. And then one more thing. Later, they were making a remake of Three's Company. They were doing a kind of a retrospective of Three's Company. And so they cast me as Don Knotts. And I went to the screening, and there he was sitting by himself. So my wife and I sat next to him. And after the movie, he says, well, you did me proud. So that was amazing.
Sure. That really is amazing. And to take on that character, if my eyes were closed, I would think you were him.
Well,
I would have spent a lot of time making phone calls with that voice. So I can for sure.
That's right. Yeah. It says on my Wikipedia that I did that. I don't recall that I actually did it, but people say that. But I did impersonate him, and I did go to some big events. And sometimes I would work corporate events where I was supposedly the security guard. And then the people that sold the Andy Griffith Show videotapes hired me to go to their conventions. And one time they took me to a Walmart convention with 15,000 people. And I was doing some Barney there. And it was really amazing how much the character was beloved. I mean, people really loved Don Knotts. And I didn't really realize it, until I started doing it. And it made people like me. So I owe him a great debt. And I have to say one thing that really meant a lot to me. When he did pass away, his wife reached out to me to invite me to the memorial service because she said I was his favorite of the people that impersonated him. So that was really nice.
That's really incredible. And to meet those people and to portray him and to have your name get out there and that they call you to come in for Three's Company. That's incredible. So I have to ask you that there seems to be a recurring theme, because you mentioned it, of struggling actors waiting tables. But actually, that's true in your case. So what did you learn from waiting tables and the character and people to make that jump finally from acting in the restaurant to acting for a living? Because as you said, you made a career out of it for well over 30 years.
Yeah, it was interesting, Mark, because the restaurant where I was working, most of the waiters were also actors. And this was a brand new restaurant. It came from Chicago. Ed DeBevick's is really popular in Chicago, and they opened it in Beverly Hills. So all these waiters are actors, and the restaurant wants us to play characters as we wait tables. But it was really interesting. A lot of the actors did not really get into playing characters while they waited tables. And I'm thinking, this is my opportunity, So I wasn't concerned about making money as a waiter so much as, although I did want to do great service for everybody, but I knew this was an opportunity where, everybody was coming into this restaurant. It was very popular. And we would have big events like the Dirty Dancing premiere and things like that. And I thought, well, I don't want to be a waiter. I want to be an actor. So let me act while I'm waiting tables. And then, of course, the Barney Fife thing also really helped me. So the interesting thing is, so while I'm waiting tables dressed as a nerd, and I had a "Kick Me Hard" sign on my back, like back in the day, these poor nerds had "Kick Me Hard" signs that people put on them. Anyway, one of the customers that would come in regularly was a director, unbeknownst to me. And so when they came time to cast the movie that he was going to direct, Revenge of the Nerds 3, he thought of me, this waiter at the restaurant. And that ended up giving me opportunity to have a lead role in that movie, which was a real opportunity to, really start to become a successful actor.
Well, that is so interesting. And it really speaks to ego or lack of ego, because you're riding the wave of, hey, everybody remembers me as this nerd. And then the epitome, the Revenge of the Nerds. I think maybe Revenge of the Nerds 3 and 4 you were in.
Right,
and, yeah. You go there. So that's just amazing. So ride that wave. Boys and girls, if you're watching,
Yeah.
You can embrace it. So you were in about 20 episodes in the NBC hit show, My Name is Earl. So aside from the number of episodes, you talk about different characters. But what's the difference between a one and done role and a recurring character role?
Yeah. So, Mark, it's been really interesting, and I'm so very blessed. Oftentimes, I've had a one-time character that became a recurring character. So, for example, we had this campaign for Del Taco. I don't know if you have Del Taco where you are, but it's like Taco Bell on the West Coast. And I did a one-time commercial that they eventually brought me back again, and then again, and then again, to where I did it for 6 years. So that became a campaign. Well, there's been a number of television shows, like My Name is Earl, for example. I was on the pilot episode of that show. And for those that don't know the show, what happens, kind of a guy that hasn't lived a great life ends up winning the lottery. And then he loses his ticket, and he realizes he lost it because he didn't deserve it, because he didn't live a very good life. So once the ticket suddenly amazingly comes back to him, he makes a list of all the people he did wrong to, and one by one is marking them off the list. Well, I was the very first one that he marked off the list. So I was in the pilot episode, and the pilot episode won Emmys for the director, the writer, and the casting director. It was a great show. Well, then they decided to keep bringing me back. And so instead of a one-time guest star, I became a recurring character, one of the characters in that town. And I've been very fortunate. I've had 12 shows that I've had recurring characters, and almost all of them, like the commercial, was, and even Barney Fife on the late night show was just, I was supposed to be one time, and they kept bringing me back. And I coach a class now called the Working Actors Workshop from time to time. And I'm always telling people, as soon as you go into work, don't think of it as a one-time thing. Think of it, you belong there, and do excellent work and be somebody that they will want to spend time with. And, if you're fortunate, they'll keep bringing you back. And that's been the case for me.
Well, you also mentioned, I want to circle back to the Del Taco commercial. So how difficult is it to be an acting role that you have to make your mark in 30 seconds, sometimes even less?
That's a great question, actually. And also for the creative aspect for the writers, they have to try to make everything work within 30 seconds. And so our campaign was kind of notable because it was funny. The commercials were funny. And that was what drew attention. It's really hard to get people to pay attention to commercials. And so what the writers did was they created a funny environment each time, and then they would show a little bit of food and then create a good feel about Del Taco. So when people thought of it, they'd, oh, I remember those commercials, they're funny. And so it was very tricky to make an entire scene work within really 15 to 20 seconds because they want to show the food for 10 seconds too. So the writers did a great job of coming up with some funny concepts. If anybody ever goes to my website, they can kind of see a retrospective of some of the commercials. But what would happen is they would write a script and it would have a concept and lines and everything, and we would shoot it. But after that, they would say, well, let's just start messing around, start improvising. And so that a lot of the great commercials that came from that were improvising and trying to make things funny quickly, like you're suggesting. It's tricky, but when you have great writers like that in any TV show that I've been on, when the writing is great, it really makes it wonderful as the actor. The main job, I think, for us as actors is to bring the truth. So if the writing's funny and we bring the truth and the situation's funny, then it becomes funny.
Well, your website is greggbinkley.com, correct?
Right, with two G's, Gregg.
Right. I want a lot of people to know that because I have seen that retrospective. And I have to tell you that I also was going to say I wasn't taking anything away from you. First of all, I thought they were hilarious.
Thank you.
But this happens to me a lot when I'm watching a TV series or something, and they say, it wasn't always this guy who was going to be Tony Soprano. It was going to be this guy, that kind of thing. And then you get used to like it can't be anybody else. But I can't see it being anybody else but you, because as funny as the lines were, one just stuck out in particular. I think you're on a nude beach.
Right.
And watching it, and people will see it. But I just thought the way you ran, the timing, the way you ran, the facial expression, because I played it back a couple of times. That was really masterful. So, I mean, I was definitely entertained by that. And it was just a commercial, but you are the Del Taco guy. So I have to ask you also, you've been and continue to be blessed because you are a very, very busy actor. But what were some of the struggles you experienced along the way in the entertainment industry? So often we know the glory, but not the story.
Well, I like that phrase. That's great. Well, it's always a challenge. It is always a challenge. And even now, I mean, I've been doing really well lately, but, I have to keep going. It's always a challenge. There are statistics. A lot of people don't know this that aren't in the industry that to really be successful, you have to be in the union, SAG-AFTRA, Screen Actors Guild, and AFTRA union. And of the people that are in the union, only 15% work, 85% unemployment. So 85% unemployment. And of the 15% that do work, only 1% make over 100,000. So it's very difficult to make long-term. And so I've certainly had those struggles, and I've been very fortunate at times to get contracts. So the really way to make a living as an actor is to get a contract. So when I was on Del Taco, I had a contract. When I was Into the Night with Rick Dees, I had a contract. And eventually Raising Hope, I got a contract. But anytime between there, you're doing guest stars and things like that. And then not only getting paid for that, but eventually residuals when the TV shows continue to run. So, Mark, I tell you, it's always a challenge. And the problem becomes when you think you have it made, then you're really in trouble because you take the foot off the gas. So it's one of those things that I think anybody that's successful, whether it's in acting or anything else, has to have a vision for themselves. They have to see themselves being successful, because I tell people in my class, for example, the only two things that we can control is our work ethic and our vision for the future. And so as if you keep working on your craft and you keep having a vision that you're going to be successful, then when your opportunity comes, then you can actually book the job and get work. So it's always a struggle. I look forward to the time when I'm in my 80s and can look back and see all the things that I did. But in the mindset right now, it's like I got to keep working, got to keep working.
Right. So what is the pressure like? I mean, you're probably so into a role and loving it, and then they say cut and it's over. You know, in life, it's many things are you're only as good as your last gig, that kind of thing. So what is that like for an actor? You're not a struggling actor, but what is that like for any kind of actor? Because the people, the numbers that you just threw at me are really, really emotional, for lack of a better word. I'm thinking of people who want to go into the entertainment industry, and they don't realize, you know, there's so much entertainment industry. There's the cameraman, there's directors. I've interviewed people who have never and will never and don't ever want to be on screen, but they are heavily involved in the entertainment industry. So what is a typical day, week, month like? You're waiting for a call, I guess, from an agent. There's auditions. What is that world like for you?
Well, you just never know. It's so unpredictable. And that's why most actors that have been around for a while will tell you as soon as they book a flight out of town, that's when they get a job. That seems to always be the case because you never know when it's going to happen. And so, for example, I was recently on NCIS, NCIS. Earlier this year, I did NCIS Los Angeles. But I read for NCIS out of the blue. I didn't know I was going to have an audition. Suddenly I have an audition. I got it that morning. And now these days we record at home and send it in rather than go into the casting office. So I got it that morning, sent it in that night. And then next week, here I have a great guest star role on NCIS. And I'm working with Gary Cole and all these people that have been on the show for 20 years, you know. And then, like you say, they call cut. And now I got to go home and wait for the next opportunity. So you always have to be prepared. That's the main thing. And recognize the work that needs to be done to where you can be ready now. If I get a call today and I have to record it tonight, I have to make sure I'm ready now. So I just have to stay sharp.
I like you to mention stay sharp. I had Kevin Sorbo, TV's Hercules, on the show.
I watched that. That was good. Yeah.
Thank you. And he, you know, he's had a massive career, still does. But he talks about being in acting school. He said, and I leaned over to Matthew Perry and said, and then I turned to Brad Pitt and said, so these people really hone their craft. I've also had Barbara Niven, who's on so many Hallmark movies and has done so much great work, but she also wrote a book about, you know, how to look good on camera and things of that nature. And I want to now delve into your working actors workshop. As an educator myself of well over 30 years, I know how rewarding it is to teach others and how much better I become from teaching others. So what do you get out of your workshops, and what is in your workshop overcoming victim behavior?
I like that. Well, so I eventually got on a show called Raising Hope, and I was a series regular on that for 4 years. And after that, as I told you, sometimes you can take the foot off the gas. Well, I took the foot off the gas, and I went about 3 years without getting too much work, a little bit here and there. And I thought to myself, well, how did I become successful? Well, how did I do it? Because when I moved out here, I didn't just want to be an actor. I wanted to prove that I could be successful in the most difficult profession to be successful in long term. And so I used a lot of success principles, you know, that I would listen to growing up. So I thought, well, maybe if I teach others, maybe it'll come back to me. Maybe I can, you know, get my juices running again. So I decided to start the Working Actors Workshop and brought some people in, and I came up with drills for them to do. You know, I always say work on what you need to work on to get work. And so we would make sure we were on top of our game with auditions and so forth. And what was happening, it was the people in the class were booking, but I wasn't. So I eventually went to this other class, a man named Howard Fine, who's a fantastic teacher. And very long story short, he taught me about the use of yourself. When you use yourself in these characters, find the character within you rather than play an actor. You know, be an actor playing a character, find it within you, find the truth within you. And so I found the love for the craft again by finding that, you know, if I can trust myself in the moment, I can bring this character to life truthfully. So then I started doing the Working Actors Workshop again, and people were booking and I was booking. But the question you had about victim behavior, so many people, so many actors are very needy. I mean, I told you the chances of you being successful are so small. So when you have an opportunity, it's very normal for you probably to come in and really want the job. And, you know, you come in with that neediness. And that's repels people. Instead of compelling them to want to hire you, it repels them because they're like, well, how needy is this person going to be if I actually hire them? So in the class, actually, I have everybody do a victim audition, come in and act all needy, ask for permission to do things, apologize for things, not listen when you get direction, don't listen, all these things that needy people do. And you see that in real life. Nobody wants to be around somebody that sucks the energy out and is needy. And so it's so important. And Bryan Cranston talks about this, and the way that changed his life was once he realized when he goes into a room that he's giving them a gift rather than try to get something from them, he's giving them something. That gave him a lot of power. And that's one of the big things that I try to coach everybody in the class. Come in to give rather than get. And when you do that, ironically, you'll end up getting more.
Gregg Binkley, just want to thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experiences in acting. I want to give you a special thank you for paying it forward and teaching others. I think that's huge. And to my viewers, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Gregg, can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.